Daily Telegram.
Believe it or not, everybody, we are back for another edition of the Temple Daily Telegram High School Football Padcast.
Padcast? Feels
How
like
about
the
a podcast? Man, that was going so well for about 3 seconds. And
I would say take two.
I misspoke.
We never do a take two
No,
here.
why would we?
Yeah.
What are you playing? Like word search on your phone or something? What's going on?
Yes. All I look with Andrew done. I got nothing to talk about.
How angry are those birds over there?
Tetris? Nice. Josh Weaver with Daniel Zapata.
Hello.
Marcus Hood.
How's it going?
Texting. It's going great, man. Thanks for asking. How are you?
Awesome. Good, thanks.
Fantastic.
Man.
It is, what is today, Wednesday, December 9th, and Temple is 2 days away from finally opening up the Class 6A Division II playoffs.
Week 75 of the high school football season.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
congrats on them for making it this long.
These teams have been playing since
For over a year.
2012.
Is it just me? I'm the only one that feels like it's been that long of a season.
It's been a long season.
Can't remember where I've been last week. So.
And it could be even longer for Temple. They have the potential, if they play well, obviously, to extend this maybe to Christmas.
Yeah.
Maybe to New Year's.
So you were saying January earlier.
It could be. The last team standing in this high school football season will be playing in January 2021.
Yep.
January 16th is the Class 6A state championship game. So,
We just don't know for sure where yet.
right, exactly.
For some reason.
That is still TBD. Anyway, we will talk about the Wildcats' first round playoff game. We will also put a bow on the Belton Tigers 2020 season. Unfortunately, for the second straight year, the Tigers have missed out on the playoffs. Losing to Harker Heights last week in a game that determined the final playoff spot out of District 12 6A. And for that quick season wrap-up, I will turn it over to Daniel Zapata before we talk some Temple.
Yeah. It was a good season by the Belton Tigers. They accomplished a lot, first year under head coach Brett Sniffen and his staff there. And, the big thing for Belton all season long was just trying to play as many games as possible, whether that was 5, 6, however many that was, once the quarantines kind of came into effect a couple of weeks ago, really wasn't sure where that season was going to go. But, they were able to bounce back and, they finished off somewhat strong. They beat Ellison after their quarantine. They played a really good Shoemaker team and just came up short in overtime. And then, had a good first half versus Harker Heights. I believe they trailed 14-13 at the break, and then not so hot there in the second half. But overall a good season as far as accomplishing some stuff. The coaching staff wanted them to improve their defense. That's kind of been a main focal point from the beginning of the season, and they did that. I believe they, if I remember right, they allowed 280 somewhat points this season as compared to last year. They allowed, I think, 360 or 370. So, a big jump in the right direction that way. Not exactly half as few as they allowed last year, but that was kind of the main point where they wanted to get to, but still a good place to improve upon. And they got a lot of good guys coming back next year. They'll lose a good handful of seniors, a lot of good key contributors to this year's team, but they'll reload. They'll have more production next year, and the whole point of this coming off season, which will be the first off season for Brett Sniffen and the coaching staff, because they didn't get one last year with COVID and everything that was going on at that time. So the main point is just to continue to work on the defense, get guys where they need to be, and just do a better job of planning for the future, establishing the program, and moving on from there. A few main points for next year is obviously they'll have to find a new starting quarterback. Ruben Jimenez, a senior, he played his last game for the Tigers against Harker Heights, so they'll have to replace him. Couple of key names that Coach Sniffen told me that would be in the running. Probably the front runner as of now would be Riley Madden. He's a junior. He will be a senior next year. He played He started one game versus Midland Lee in week 3 this season when Jimenez couldn't go. And then he also played and started a game at quarterback in 2019 as well. So, he's got a good arm. He's pretty solid overall. He's got varsity experience, which is more than the other 2 guys that are going to be competing for that position. So that's definitely going to be in his favor. The other 2 guys will be a sophomore, Slade LeBlanc. He'll be a junior next year. Good dual threat guy. He's overcoming 2 ACL tears, though, in the same knee, Coach Sniffen said. So, he's kind of moved past that. He's recovered pretty well. He did have a carry in the Harker Heights game, and he looked pretty solid on that. So we'll see how that goes. Kind of a dual threat guy, like I said. And then another one, freshman, will be sophomore next year, Ty Brown. Kind of a big guy, 6'3", 6'4". Really has a good, strong arm, Sniffen said. So a little more pocket passer. He is mobile, but he'll look to stay in the pocket. So you got 3 good options. Madden gives you varsity experience. LeBlanc, gives you mobility, dual threat. And then Ty Brown, Sniffen said, can just kind of throw it all over. So that'll be a key area to kind of see where Belton goes towards. They'll still want to run the ball, control the clock. So if they can have a mobile quarterback, kind of like they have the last few years, I think that'll kind of play into their system. But right now, the key is just to continue to work on that defense, get it better, and the Tigers are confident the offense will take care of itself.
Yeah, and the important thing to think about too is these guys get another year with Sniffen and his coaching staff
For sure.
in charge. Yeah. They're getting acclimated and used to everything that those coaches are trying to implement, and that's going to obviously, you would think at least make quite a difference, once next season rolls around.
Yeah, not ideal situation for Sniffen and his coaching staff to come into originally. You don't get spring ball, you don't get an off season. I mean, you barely get any time really to prepare for the season when your season was delayed a month. So, not great to jump into that. But now, hopefully next year we're not dealing with COVID. Whatever the case may be. So, yeah, Sniffen gets another year to get comfortable there, works with another group of players, and he really raved about the freshman class this year, how, he said they got their tails handed to them in the scrimmage at Hutto to start the season, and then he said the freshman team was just playing lights out there towards the end. So, a lot of things to be excited about if you're a Belton Tiger fan, and we'll just see what happens and move on from there.
Yes. Thank you, Daniel.
Moving on.
Yes, we will move on now to Temple.
The last team standing.
That's it.
For us, at least.
Yeah, usually in the second week of December, we are down to maybe only one team or no teams, and that's kind of the case this year, even though it just seems
So different.
odd.
Right, yeah.
Anyway.
And usually the 5A and 6A playoffs have also been going on for weeks at this point.
Right, yeah. The 1A to 4A, well, 1A actually, 6-man, they've already got the state championship games and participants.
Yeah, the matchups are set.
Yeah. 4A and 3A and 2A state semifinals are this week, starting Thursday. So, anyway, and here we are in 5A and 6A, and it's round 1. The other 12-6A playoff representatives, Colleen Shoemaker, Bryan, and Harker Heights, get underway this week in the playoffs. 6A Division I, the representatives are going to be Shoemaker and Heights. Shoemaker is hosting DeSoto in the first round Thursday, and Harker Heights is going to be at Duncanville. And then Bryan is going to go play Cedar Hill in the first round, the other 6A Division II representative from 12-6A. And here in Temple, the Wildcats host Waxahachie on Friday night, 7:30. Waxahachie is 5-4, Temple 9-1. Any team that comes into the playoffs at 5-4, maybe your first inclination be like, well, 5-4, that doesn't really sound that impressive. However, when you're 5-4 coming out of the district that Waxahachie came out of, with Duncanville, with DeSoto, with Cedar Hill, some Mansfield teams,
just a gauntlet.
Hewitt Midway usually is really strong. They had, the Panthers had a bit of a down year, missing the postseason, but still, I mean that district is pretty stacked. So throw the records out immediately when you think about this matchup. Waxahachie started the year with a win over Copper's Cove, then lost its next 4, including to Lamar, Ennis, DeSoto, and Cedar Hill, teams that had a combined 25-6 regular season record. So obviously, those were tough games. But then, the Indians go on to win their next 4, including a win over Mansfield Lake Ridge, 31-21. That snapped a losing streak, and it was the Waxahachie's first victory over Lake Ridge since 2013. Head coach Todd Alexander said that was kind of a turning point in their season, picking up that big win. They followed up the next week by beating Mansfield High to clinch the program's first 6A playoff berth. Waxahachie had been 5A up until the 2018 realignment. That year they were 1-9. Last year they were 2-8, and now they're 5-4.
So really, you're kind of saying just to be a playoff representative from that district. I mean, you can just throw records out of the window.
Yeah, up in that area. And then, so Waxahachie then closed the season with the win over Midway and Waco. And they come into this one at 5-4, playing pretty well. Have a quarterback who sparked that offense starting at the beginning of that winning streak, Brandon Hawkins. He actually was the district's leading receiver in yards last season. He has a team high in yards receiving this season, even though he's played the last 4 games at quarterback.
Okay.
I mean, so we're talking, big-time athlete there.
Pretty versatile.
Very versatile. Waxahachie doesn't throw it a whole lot. They don't even score that many points or have very, gaudy offensive numbers, but they're pretty efficient, especially with Hawkins back there. He's definitely the feature guy. They also have a big running back, 6'1", or 5'10", 210-pound Sean Cherry. But, the key is Hawkins, and for Temple's defense, it's getting to him early in the play, not letting him get comfortable. They got to get after him right away once that ball snapped, not give him a lot of room to move around. The other key for Temple's defense is, I would say, force a turnover or 2. They haven't done a lot of that this season, but when they do, it usually bodes well, and the offense tends to turn that into points. So that's the other point for Temple's defense. And then also, what the Wildcats have done all year is done a good job of limiting explosive play, so that's going to be another big emphasis going into this game Friday night, is to minimize those 15, 20, 30-yard chunk plays,
right?
That could be a difference in the game. So anyway, what I'm trying to get at is Waxahachie is a really good team, and Temple is not taking the Indians lightly. They're not overlooking the Indians at all. The last time Temple had a home playoff game was just 2 years ago, 2018, when a 3-7 Mesquite Horn team came in and knocked Temple right out of the playoffs.
Yeah.
So lessons learned there for sure. And we'll see if they apply them on Friday night.
Yeah, you said I don't think it was this past notebook, maybe been a story last week, but Scott Stewart kind of had some things to say about that as far as what they were, that's kind of old history by now. And, what were his comments on that again?
Yeah, that's kind of exactly what I said. I mean, anything that's happened before this season or even before this week, anything that could happen after this week, they're really not of significance to what Temple's focus is or what they're trying to do to prepare for this game. So I mean, it's pretty tunnel visioned team right now. But I mean, still, yes, that was my ring hitting the table. I apologize. My wedding ring.
Awesome.
Yeah, that my wife gave me on our wedding day.
That's usually what you do. Thanks for the explanation.
I think I got mine in the mail a week later.
Really?
We were just making sure that if we could get through that first week, maybe.
Yeah, gotcha. Yeah. Cool. Anyway, still, I think that's something those lessons when you bow out of the playoffs in the first round for the last 2 years, I think you can draw something from those games and put them toward how you get ready for this year. But anyway.
You've seen Temple, I mean, every game this season so far. So, based on how they play at home versus how they play on the road, would you say they're pretty balanced across the board, or they're definitely more dominant at home? What are your thoughts
Well,
on
their
that?
only loss was at home, and that was to Arlington Martin. The Warriors scored 21 points on special teams, which that was the ball game.
Yeah.
Temple's been pretty even as far as their performances on the road and at home this season. They had the one neutral site game against Longview to open it up at AT&T Stadium, 40-13. They went to Magnolia West after that, won by a couple touchdowns. Then that game against Martin. Their 2 games. They had 3 games on the road in District. Coppers Cove, that was a runaway victory, and then their 2 games at Leo Buckley and Killeen for District, they fell behind 20-0 to Harker Heights and came back and won that one, and then rallied to beat Shoemaker in the other game over there in Killeen. So I don't think venue has anything to do with how Temple plays. It's mainly just can they do what they do well for 4 quarters, and what they've done on offense is just be really efficient. A balanced approach. They've got to get Samari Howard going, running back. If they get that running game going, that takes a lot of pressure off of quarterback Humberto Arizmendi, who's shown he can scramble some the last couple weeks, but opening up the passing game for him through Howard and the running game will be a huge thing, and spreading it around to those weapons, receivers A.J. McDuffie, Luke Allen, Tredarius Taylor, Michael Harrison-Pilot, getting everybody involved as often as possible is going to be a pretty big key for Temple. This week, the Wildcats have averaged 38.5 points per game on offense, giving up 19.7. Waxahachie has scored only around 17 points a game, and given up 23. This is the 20th meeting overall between these 2 programs. A lot of tradition, I should say, between Waxahachie and Temple in these towns. I mean, football's, obviously big everywhere in Texas, but, these are kind of 2 tradition-rich towns. Temple leads the all-time series 16-1-2, but the teams haven't met since 1950, and that's according to our sports correspondent / historian / researcher Tim Waits, who tweeted that out earlier in the week. Marcus, I know you want to say something, just anything.
No, I really don't.
You don't? Not at all.
I'm just thinking about how 1950 is a long time ago.
Yeah, it was.
That was my insight.
Yeah, I think Temple will win this game. I just, the way they've kind of shown poise in big games that they've had so far this season, and there's a good balance of fun and just hard work. That's shown up on Friday nights or Thursday nights, I guess, in the results. So I do believe Temple will pull this one out. I don't know what you guys think. If we do make picks, are you leaning towards Temple in this one?
I have already marked Temple on my sheet, and I tend to agree with you. I think Temple's just too talented this year against Waxahachie, and you mentioned going back to their last home playoff game that they lost, and I know that hit the team hard, and it made the coaches do a lot of introspective as well. Mm-hmm. So that they're pretty focused on the records as well, and just taking care of business against who they play. It could be DeSoto, it could be Waxahachie, and the coaches are going to prepare for it the same way.
Right.
And try and get the team to not worry about the other team's record.
Exactly.
So, I'm probably going to go with Temple as well. The only thing that I think is kind of interesting is the fact that, Waxahachie has to come into this game just thinking, all the pressure's on Temple. We've talked about Temple being a solid group, level-headed, they're not letting anything overwhelm them. And when you've got as many offensive weapons and the defense has been playing the way it has, you've got reason to be confident. But, I would think that the pressure is more on Temple as far as having the home game, having the better record, being 12-6A champions. You're expected to win this game. That might play a factor. But as far as it playing a factor in the outcome, whether Temple wins or loses, I would still have to give it to Temple. They're just too talented.
Yeah, there's been a number of occasions or a number of games this season where the pressure has seemed to be on Temple. I mean, even going against Longview, Temple was the underdog in that one, but there still, was pressure on the Wildcats going into that one. Just atmosphere, things like that. Shoemaker game, Harker Heights, and Temple has the Wildcats. They've rarely shown like missteps in those situations. I mean, obviously they've won most of the games they've played, but they haven't really let circumstances get to them as far as during those 48 minutes of a game. And I think a lot of it has to do just with kind of the mindset of the team. That they're not tightly wound in the wrong way, I guess. You know what I mean?
Sure.
Like they kind of, maybe they don't even know they should be under pressure. That's something that Scott Stewart has said a lot about. He says, oftentimes, this team just doesn't blink, which has been evidenced quite a bit in some of these games. Even, maybe they've had 2 or 3 turnovers or whatever. I mean, there's just kind of a bouncy ball effect or something to them. They hit the ground, but they'll just keep, moving along. So, pressure, all that stuff.
Yeah, and that's the thing, even, and they probably don't, honestly. I mean, I wouldn't, when you play at this level and you're the team that you've described as far as the mentality goes, they probably don't even worry about that stuff. I know Scott Stewart doesn't, his coaching staff doesn't, so it's likely his players don't pay it any mind. Even so, if they do feel any pressure, they've handled it well. I mean, every district game, I would say, they've been, expected to win. I think, even against the other tough teams, Shoemaker, Harker Heights, Bryan, and 12-6A was not an easy district. So, I mean, going into every one of those games, Temple was pretty much expected to win. So, yeah, even if they did kind of confront the pressure, if that did come to their mind at all, they handled it well.
Yeah.
So,
I mean, obviously, it goes without saying, the stage is obviously bigger. I mean, the what's at stake is bigger. I mean, you lose, there is no next week to fix what went wrong Friday night. So obviously,
sure.
there's all that. But when you go through a regular season that's had, you've already played at AT&T Stadium against a really good team. You've been down by 20 or on the road in a district game and ended up figuring out a way to win. You've pulled out a late game victory in what was essentially the district championship game. So Temple's gone through situations where they've been tested and
they faced
adversity. So
adversary.
They've faced adversity against adversaries.
That we'll discuss on this podcast.
Yes, that's right.
All that stuff just definitely helps them going forward this week, and assuming they get past this week, facing some tougher teams down the road. I mean, going through tight games like that, having to come back, having to hold off late rallies, things like that, just
it kind of it's like things in your backpack that you can use later on.
Oh, here's this. There's that stick of gum.
Yeah, right. And speaking of next week and what might lie ahead, the winner between Temple and Waxahachie plays either Garland or Rockwall Heath. Garland 4-3, Rockwall Heath 7-2. At Baylor's McLean Stadium, the day and time not announced yet, but that's where the next round game will be between the winners of those two matchups. And of course, a lot of people are going to be talking about if Temple wins and Rockwall Heath wins, the matchup against Rockwall Heath, led by former Temple head coach Mike Spradlin, who's now the head coach over there at Rockwall Heath. There's former Temple quarterback Chad President on that coaching staff. Bryce Monson, I believe, is on that coaching staff, who coached not only at Temple as a head coach, but was the defensive coordinator at Temple. So a lot of ties to this area if that matchup does take place.
That's fun.
Yeah, it is fun for some people. That'll be talking points for fans and things like that. But that won't matter much to the players next week.
No.
And shoot, it could be Garland and Waxahachie playing next week, and it wouldn't even matter. So you never know.
I was thinking about that too. If Waxahachie wins this game, all these teams have already committed to play at Baylor, so you're having two Metroplex teams coming down to Waco to play a football game. If that would happen.
But they're playing at a Big 12 stadium, so it's kind of like we'll drive a little bit and play there. It's not too far for either of those.
And really, I think once you get really to like the Christmas Day games, they won't be on Christmas.
The week of Christmas.
The week of Christmas, some of these teams are going to start doing that anyway. Just play at the bigger venues just to start getting that feel for it.
Yeah.
And because you look at the schedule, or the potential schedule, Temple, none of their opponents are going to be too far away. We already know about Baylor. Then after that, all those schools, the next round, are down in the Houston area. So, if they had something set up, they could play at Energy Stadium, possibility.
Yeah.
Aggieland or Kyle Field. Aggieland. That's a whole different thing there, things like that.
Yeah.
There's.
Yeah, because the time of the year, colleges are going to be wrapping up. It's bowl games, so they're not necessarily going to be needing their home fields.
Right.
Texans and the Cowboys aren't going to be making playoffs. So
no, that's another hot take.
So those stadiums will be available. Yeah. So you're right. It might not be. That costs money for these teams who do want to play at those stadiums, but the experience might be worth that extra couple bucks, and you can get more people into those big stadiums with the restrictions and all that stuff.
That's especially true now. Temple's going to have issues this week because it was a playoff game, but it is what it is.
Yeah, they're still following the protocols that have been in place. You got to wear your mask. Tickets are limited to, I believe they're going to get about 4,000 people into there. At least that's how many tickets are available for both sides, which is half. A little less than half, actually, of Wildcat Stadium's capacity. But it's just the way it is.
Yep.
We've been dealing with this since August. The stadium stuff since August.
That is definitely another reason why they might start looking at those bigger stadiums for sure.
Yeah. And it is interesting, though, that UIL and all that haven't figured out where the 5A and 6A game's going.
Yeah, and, we were looking at that yesterday. Eric, our sports editor, and I, and we were like, Energy Stadium has this like a motocross event scheduled for the 16th of January. AT&T has nothing, so we're kind of assuming it's probably going to be at AT&T, but we're just kind of trying to figure out why it hasn't been settled yet.
Why they haven't officially come out and just made that public.
So it could still be at the Alamo.
So I was going to say, in that case, the Alamo Dome is still an option, because at this point, somewhere indoor is what's become the norm the last bunch of years anyway. So
the Sun Bowl out in El Paso is definitely not going to get the state championship game.
No.
Just because you're in El Paso.
Right.
Well, still, you get to January, you have no idea if it's going to be cold and rainy and wet, and it could be miserable depending on the weather, and that's kind of a general, that could happen anywhere across the state.
Right.
But, yeah, you definitely want that inside. Just cool atmosphere, cool place.
Yeah. Well, we will either be back next week talking about a second round playoff matchup for Temple, or talking about 2021 Temple. We will see.
Time will tell.
Yes. Until then, good night and good luck, Michael Scott.
Oh, man.
Oh, jeez.
So long, everybody.